Welcome back to Fantasy Domain. We are so happy to be on this channel creating content. Again, this is going to be your one-stop shop for redraft content this offseason and into this NFL fantasy season. So make sure you are subscribed. We're trying to grow this channel, trying to get it monetized, trying to grow our reach. So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you drop a like on this video as we grow this channel. This is the #1 thing you can do to help us out. So we really appreciate you dropping a like as well. Today, we're going to talk about 5 running backs in fantasy football that you should absolutely be drafting this year. And yes, we could have easily come on here and said, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, like, yeah. We're not gonna start with the most obvious video of all time for our first dedicated redraft video. If you don't know us, we're typically dynasty guys, but we play redraft too. We're gonna get in that
a lot of
redraft.
Yeah. We've played for a long time.
We're gonna play a lot of best ball this year as well. So make sure you subscribe for best ball content.
Have some live real money startups.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Those are the dollar leagues are gonna be fun.
Yes,
but
sir.
5 must draft running backs in fantasy, and the first one's gonna be ROSCHON Johnson. So I mentioned this on our Dynasty channel, but I saw a graphic this week that's asking about the best running back duos in the NFL. And for the Bears, it said Khalil Herbert and Deonta Foreman.
Ew. Excuse me, did you forget ROSCHON Johnson?
And so something is telling me that we're already underestimating the potential impact that the rookie could have. Naturally, because he is a rookie. Naturally, because, he's not projected, probably, if you're looking at points per game, he's not projected to get an inordinate amount of points right off the bat. He is going to slide down in ADP in your fantasy drafts. And because of that, you're going to be able to draft him probably at backup prices. And he's somebody that, honestly, I think you should be drafting in the later rounds of your fantasy leagues. I think you should absolutely be trying to take a chance on ROSCHON Johnson, trying to make the bet. And by training camp, this could be irrelevant because he could already be rumored to be getting first team snaps. But Khalil Herbert, Khalil Herbert, everybody's going to point to the efficiency last year, but the reason he was so efficient was because he wasn't getting workhorse carries. And he's not going to do that this year either. So with ROSCHON Johnson, he's stepping in to a Bears offense that's going to have a lot of opportunity. I think they're going to try to take some of the wild running plays away from Justin Fields, let him pass the ball a little bit more, which could mean some more dump downs for some of these running backs. I mean, you saw ROSCHON Johnson in college in the limited sample size that he gave you. He was very efficient with his touches. He was efficient through the receiving game as well. You've already seen some of the hype videos coming out from the Bears training camp of him getting around and passing catching the ball a little bit from a reception standpoint. So with ROSCHON Johnson, I think he's a guy people are entirely too low on from an immediate production standpoint. So in your fantasy leagues, in your best ball leagues, he could end up being a late round steal or even a waiver wire steal. So ROSCHON Johnson, a guy that we're super high on. The next guy, though, is a guy that not only is he undervalued, he's going to score a lot of points this year. And that's Miles Sanders.
Yeah, so Miles Sanders, I know this doesn't mean a lot to you fantasy players, but his contract does say a lot about, his 4-year contract does say a lot about how the Panthers plan to use him, especially in the next 2 seasons, while Bryce Young is developing in that offense. While everyone is very excited, especially in the Dynasty community, about Jonathan Mingo, they kind of forget about the rushing ability of that backfield in an offense that's going to be, like I said, developing Bryce Young. They're going to not probably ask a ton of Bryce Young his rookie season from a passing game perspective, and they brought on Miles Sanders for a reason. They brought him on so that he could take a load off of Bryce Young. He could take a load off the passing game, and that they could really slow the game down and punch the ball downfield and just take a lot of stress off of the inexperience in that offense overall. Like, this is just, to me, this is a no-brainer. Miles Sanders is going to consistently be underdrafted. He's going to be consistently underrated overall. I mean, this guy last season in the Eagles' offense, which was a loaded offense, and he had less opportunity than we would have hoped, he still had 259 carries, 1,200 rushing yards, 5 yards per carry, and tacked on 20 receptions on top of that for 78 receiving yards and 11 total touchdowns. He ended up having 12.7 fantasy points per game, and I think finished as a
he was an RB1.
He was an RB1.
RB11, I think.
From a total points perspective, he finished that high. So Really, really happy to see him do that in that offense. Obviously, the Eagles moved on from him. They wanted some more dynamic play, especially in the passing game. So they moved on from him. They went and got DeAndre Swift. But Miles Sanders, from a rushing perspective, is going to offer a ton in that offense. And honestly, something that we don't talk about very often with Miles Sanders is his 50 receptions his rookie season in Philadelphia. And that was when they're kind of, Carson Wentz was still playing then, and he was struggling with injury, I think. But Miles Sanders was tearing it up, had 500 receiving yards, and people, I mean, he was going up draft boards big time, and he kind of ended up disappointing over the next couple of seasons because, remember, Kenneth Gainwell came in and kind of took away his receiving opportunity. Look for Miles Sanders' receiving opportunity to go up a little bit in Carolina, and when you're playing in PPR leagues in fantasy, that's what you're looking for. I mean, those PPR guys are expensive at the running back position in fantasy drafts, and you're getting a guy at a discount like Miles Sanders who has shown it in the past and is probably going to show it again with an inexperienced quarterback in Bryce Young.
Yep, absolutely. The next guy on our list is going to be Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Jones is a guy that has been very familiar to fantasy players over the last couple of years and should absolutely be again, regardless of what people tell you. When you're looking at what rookie quarterbacks, we'll call Jordan Love a rookie for the sake of that. It's going to be his first year of relevant snaps, relevant starts in the NFL from a consistency standpoint. So when you're talking about younger quarterbacks or rookie quarterbacks in their first year, they're going to rely on two things a lot: the tight ends and the checkdowns. And Jordan Love, I think, is going to be relying on Aaron Jones a lot. There was speculation this year that Aaron Jones wouldn't even be back with the Packers, and the Packers reaffirmed their team investment in him, their commitment to him as a player and a person, and now you have Aaron Jones back. Aaron Jones, a guy who had nearly 15 fantasy points per game last year in that Green Bay Packers offense, and why on earth would it get any lower this year? The quarterback situation, I mean, Aaron Rodgers admittedly did not have a super good season last year. Aaron Jones got plenty of usage. A lot of people worried about A.J. Dillon, or actually we're drafting A.J. Dillon above Aaron Jones, and we've seen why that's a bad idea. With Aaron Jones being the PPR back in Green Bay, there really is no excuse to be letting him slide without taking him. He's going to be a good later round pick in your fantasy drafts. He's a guy every year that slides down, and look, when I honestly, I don't understand it. We're going to score points, and you're talking about a guy, like I said, that's probably going to repeat scoring 15 fantasy points per game, and Aaron Jones getting those receptions, being that playmaker in the open field, getting those touchdowns in the red zone. I mean, with Aaron Jones, I think there's a lot to like about where he's going to.
Yeah, I mean, the last time he had less than 45 receptions in a single season was back in 2018, his second year in the NFL, when he only played 12 games. Since then, he's up 49 receptions, 47, 52, and last year, more than any other season, 59 receptions. And on top of that, he tacked on 1,100 rushing yards. I mean, that's just an absolute dominant stud, and that was in Aaron Rodgers' worst passing season. Yeah. Jordan Love ain't going to be any better this year, guys. He's just not, especially his first season. There's going to be a lot of room for development and improvement in that offense. And like you said, that just bodes really well for the running back there.
Absolutely. And the next guy on our list is going to be somebody who we've been touting a lot, and that's going to be James Conner.
Yeah, so James Conner is someone that we've been screaming from the rooftops, just like Miles Sanders all this offseason. Buy James Conner, buy James Conner, buy James Conner. His value isn't going to be any less than it is now until he is completely irrelevant in fantasy. I mean, you can get him for late seconds, early thirds in Dynasty when you're talking about.
That's cheap.
And that is incredibly cheap. And in fantasy, he's going too far for a guy that's an alpha running back in that offense with no Kyler Murray. I know people are concerned about the running back behind him and Keontae Ingram. Who gives a rip?
No.
I mean, James Conner is about as versatile as you can get from a fantasy perspective. Really, I mean, in the NFL, for a veteran running back, very experienced veteran running back, last season, in 13 games played, he was 9th in fantasy points per game, 782 rushing yards, 46 receptions in 13 games, guys. Yeah. 15.4 points per game. He did not slow down. He did not underachieve from a points per game basis compared to what he did in 2021. He's not slowing down. The only thing that is a possible concern is injury. But isn't that always a concern for every running back in fantasy?
We're not going to forecast.
We're not forecasting injury.
That's not going to be a reason we miss out on a player in fantasy.
You can forecast opportunity, though, and James Conner has some of the best opportunity in the NFL. You can't miss with this guy. You just can't.
No, you can't. 100%. 100% agree. And then the last guy here is going to be somebody who you might have a little bit of questions about why we would even have it on here.
Yeah, this is a PPR. Yes. Specifically PPR.
It's going to be a PPR pick, and that's going to be Zach Charbonnet. So, I mean, we're not going to predict injury, but I do want to lead with the fact that Zach Charbonnet is a Kenneth Walker injury away from producing at high-end RB2 or low-end RB1 levels.
Yes.
Like, I mean, legitimately he is, because he's going to come in and he's going to be one of the better all-around backs in the NFL. From a skill set standpoint, he's got very good team investment. And Zach Charbonnet, when you look at what he was able to do in college from the receiving game, from the rushing perspective on the ground as well, that's going to translate very well. He's a bigger guy. He can take a lot of carries and a lot of receptions and still be fine week to week. But he is a guy, even while Kenneth Walker is on the field, even while Kenneth Walker is playing for the Seattle Seahawks, and yes, Kenneth Walker rightfully should be the RB1 in Seattle from a fantasy football perspective, Zach Charbonnet should not be far behind. When you look at Kenneth Walker and what he was doing in the receiving game last year, I mean, his floor was lowered because he was not giving you those 2 to 3 receptions a game that you like to see in a PPR running back that raises their floor a little bit. Because of that, I mean, people wondering, myself included, why they even went out and drafted Zach Charbonnet when you have Kenneth Walker in that offense, somebody they just drafted the year before, had second-round draft capital, had a really good year, was in talks for Offensive Rookie of the Year, and they drafted Zach Charbonnet, and you wonder why. Well, after extensive research, and we've looked a lot into this situation, we think it's for him to be a PPR back. And when you're talking about PPR backs in fantasy football, yes, please. Couple that with the fact that because of Kenneth Walker, because he's a rookie, he is going to be discounted a lot in fantasy football. And yes, for the most part, we should not expect rookies in fantasy football to be producing at a high level at first. I mean, that is generally a good rule. However, I think ROSCHON Johnson, I think Zach Charbonnet are two guys that are going into situations that were drafted by teams that are going to use them and that plan on using them right off the bat and giving them usage, giving them opportunity, and therefore giving them points in fantasy. I think Zach Charbonnet is absolutely somebody that could provide that for your fantasy team this year, especially like in a flex spot or something like that.
Yeah. A lot of times for running backs, you're looking for the guys that get a lot of snap share, a lot of opportunity, a lot of ability to show, the possibility of maybe being a bell cow running back and just getting as much opportunity as possible. The best thing about, like you said, PPR backs is that they don't require that much offensive investment when it comes to snap share. Yeah. And Zach Charbonnet is going to be, I believe, a perfect example of that, where he's going to make the most out of every limited opportunity he gets in that offense. And like you said, he's probably going to be a really solid flex option, especially towards the end of the season when you're trying to make that push for your fantasy championship.
Absolutely. All right, those are 5 guys that we personally are going to be drafting a ton of in best ball and fantasy drafts this year, and we think you should too. Let us know in the comments what you think, and if there are other guys that you think are must-draft running backs in fantasy football, again, outside of the very obvious ones, guys that are going in later rounds that you think are going to produce at a high level this year. These are ours. Do us a huge favor and like this video. It's going to really help us grow this channel, and make sure you're subscribed. More content on the way. We're going to bring you all kinds of fantasy content as we go throughout the fantasy season. We really appreciate you watching. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.